Hello, my name's Devin Crimebring, and it is March 5th, 2026, and I am officially announcing my candidacy for the Massachusetts State Representative for 10th Suffolk District here in Boston. This district covers part of Jamaica Plain and West Roxbury for the most part. And I'd like to take a minute to talk about some things that I'd like to get out of this candidacy. We all want stability and comfort for ourselves and our loved ones. We want to feel safe, to stop living paycheck to paycheck, to not worry about our kids being bullied or killed at school. We want community, to feel like our voice matters, to have leaders who share our goals, the American dream. But that dream is built on nightmares, and the rise of fascistic authoritarianism here in this country shows that these nightmares are coming home. Maintaining the level of comfort and material conditions currently enjoyed by a minority of the U.S. population requires that we maintain the mechanisms of exploitation and oppression we have in place across the globe. To improve conditions here, those mechanisms must intensify. More extraction, lower wages, ecological devastation, forced labor, devastating infrastructure, and social services through debt, economic sanctions, permanent war. Revolution isn't willed into being by leftists on the internet. It is the result of decades of struggle. That struggle must be militant, organized, and unafraid of escalation. It's correct to say that the U.S. has the wealth to implement universal health care, to raise wages, to provide food and housing for its people. You can point to Scandinavian countries and say that's what we should do too. That this can all be paid for by taxing the rich. But taxing the rich is simply asking for a bigger cut of the plunder of a global system of imperialism. It keeps that all intact and provides the billionaire class temporary stability without fundamentally changing the system. Scandinavian welfare states rely on the same imperialist supply chains and unequal exchange as the United States. They just distribute the plunder in a slightly more egalitarian way right now. Bezos and Musk don't care if they've got 500 billion or 300 billion, but it's already more than they could ever spend. They care about keeping the system that allows them to consolidate power and increase profits. Taxation is the rent they pay to maintain the state that protects their private ownership. There's no right candidate, no debate we can win that's going to change the brutal extraction that subsidizes consumption and comfort in the global north. No incremental reform that can abolish oppressive sanctions and debt regimes that maintain the conditions required for paying workers less than the cost of survival. No change in Democratic Party leadership that's going to threaten the stability of the empire. The facts on this are clear. Global South countries paid $847 billion in debt, in net interest on public debt in 2023. Over 3 billion people live in countries that spend more on debt interest than on education or health. In 2015, the global north net appropriated commodities and labor from the south worth $10.8 trillion in northern prices. From 1990 to 2015, the cumulative drain reached $242 trillion. The global north consumes 1/3 of its labor through net appropriation. Wage gaps between North and South are 87 to 95% lower for equal skill work and 83 to 98% lower even within the same sectors. The World Bank reports that developing countries spent $1.4 trillion servicing the foreign debt in 2023, with interest payments hitting a 20-year high of $406 billion. The United States accounts for nearly 40% of global military spending. In 2024, global military spending reached $2.718 trillion. The United States spent $997 billion, roughly 37% of the total military expenditure. The United States holds roughly 16.5% of IMF voting power, and major IMF decisions require 85% approval, giving the U.S. an effective veto. At the World Bank, the U.S. holds roughly 16% voting share, with major decisions also requiring 85%. Once again, another worldwide organization that the United States holds veto power in. The U.S. prison population more than quadrupled between 1980 and the late 2000s. The United States now has the highest incarceration rate among large democracies. We have roughly 4% of the world's population and 25% of its prisoners. Billion-dollar climate disasters are accelerating in cost. The U.S. experienced 28 individual billion-dollar disasters in 2023, costing $92.9 billion, and in 2024, 27 individual events costing $182 billion. The largest 1% of farms control over 70% of global farmland. Peer-reviewed global agricultural synthesis shows that the largest 1% of farms operate over 70% of the world's farmland, indicating extreme concentration of land ownership and enclosure. Sanctions are associated with hundreds of thousands of excess deaths annually, though the United States purports these as not being warfare. And 2/3 of the world's population are under United States sanctions to some extent. A multi-decade economic study finds unilateral economic sanctions are associated with approximately 564,000 excess deaths per year, with children under 5 disproportionately affected. The people advocating revolution are not idealists. They're simply expanding the scope of the same concerns you have. They want every child to have food, housing, education, healthcare, and the chance to live a good life free from oppression. They are acknowledging that the current systems of capitalism and imperialism cannot provide this on a global scale. What they're saying is that the cost of providing this to a privileged strata in the United States is the maintenance and acceleration of this system, and that's a cost that's too high. That it doesn't matter who we elect to manage this system, because both parties simply reflect different management styles for maintaining the systems of capitalist domination and global imperialism. No serious person is advocating collapse for the sake of collapse, or violence for the sake of violence. Rhetorical posturing aside, what people are reacting to is the violence this system is built on. A system that relies on the deaths of hundreds of thousands of children every year. A system that requires over 700 military bases around the world to ensure the compliance of the global south. A system that criminalizes homelessness, militarizes police, and requires a vast prison industrial complex to maintain order. These are not the result of unfortunate, misguided policy. This is not a broken system. It is a functioning one. These are systems that require dismantling, not incremental reform from good leaders. The argument is not to create a crisis, but that the stability and comfort we enjoy at the moment is the cause of the crisis for the world's majority. I think the question we should be asking up front is whether people are willing to help build revolutionary organizations and infrastructure, not whether they're willing to die for the revolution. We don't need everyone to be Shay. We need people reliably working towards building power that can win. Every successful revolutionary movement in history began with disciplined organization first. Romanticized death vows without a focus on structure, logistics, political education, and mass support don't build power or threaten the ruling class. Abstract courage without organization simply burns people out rather than create the power to win. Revolution is not something willed into being with radical slogans. It's having the organization, discipline, and capacity to provide an alternative when crisis hits. Moral clarity isn't strategy. So, I'm not asking you to die for the revolution. I'm asking you to understand the terrain and make a realistic assessment of the risks involved. To abandon the fantasy that if we just vote harder, protest in larger numbers, or frame the issues more clearly, we can elect leaders who can fix this. There's no fixing a system that's not broken. Our task is building the capacity to replace the current system with one centered on dignity, democracy, solidarity, peace, sustainability, and meeting human needs. We do that by building the organization and infrastructure required for that transition. These organizations have historically been violently repressed by the state, so we need to plan accordingly. That is a question of strategy and survivability. No one has all the answers yet, but we have frameworks that can teach us and lessons to be learned through struggle. The tasks before us are clear. Join a revolutionary party. Build functional mutual aid networks. Organize militant unions. Weaken the state apparatus. Fight reactionary movements in the street. Educate the masses. Build international solidarity. Create logistics and supply lines. And protect yourself and your neighbors. We have a world to win for the working class and generations to come. Thank you.